Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Walking Together podcast. My name is Nick Adams, and I am here with Kyle, John, and Jordan. And we are four guys trying to help you grow and deepen your relationship with the Lord and trying to answer some questions that you think about but don't normally talk about. And John brought up a interesting question this morning. John, you want to...
Yeah,
tell us about it?
I was watching a YouTube channel that I subscribe to. This guy that I respect. It's called Warrior Poet Society, and he had a guest speaker on this morning, or I guess it wasn't this morning because it was kind of like a few days ago. I had trying to play catch up. But he had a friend of his that's also a YouTuber on there. They're both war fighters, and the guy has ALS, and he's got 2 weeks to live, basically. And he was talking about how he had made the decision he's going to go fight in Bahrain. In Ukraine. Sorry, not Bahrain. So the conversation was back and forth about that. He was, it was John Lovell's the guy for what Warrior Poet Society was basically just friend to friend going, hey, do you think that's a wise decision? You've got 2 weeks left. You've got a family. You've got children. You've got lots of priorities and lots of things. And it was just an interesting discussion. So I thought it'd be something cool for us to talk about. No Sunday school churchy answers, but just legit. You have 2 weeks to live. You know that, your body's shutting down 2 weeks from now. You're not gonna be here. What are your priorities? Where do you go from there?
Well, I think that depends on if you're married, if you have kids, if you're single. Personally, just thinking about it, my first priority is God and then my wife and my kids. So, I can get where the guy's coming from about, immediately you want to go do something you wouldn't normally do, some heroic, courageous, God-fearing act. But in actuality, logically, I would probably make sure my wife is taken care of, that we're on the same page, that my kids know and believe that, because of my relationship with Christ, that my body's temporary and this life is temporary. So I'm not just dying. I'm moving on to greater things. And I guess just having those conversations would be like my first initial reaction. And then following that, I don't know, I wouldn't be so worried about time or getting things, you should live like that more, I think. Mm-hmm. But, I would do things that honored God and do things that, I wasn't worried about time.
Who's that female singer that sang the song "Live Like You Were Dying"?
I think that was Tim McGraw.
Yeah, that was definitely Tim McGraw.
Yeah. He's a pretty lady.
I don't know those country singers, man. Come on.
He wrote that song because his dad was actually Tug McGraw, who was a pitcher for the Phillies, and they didn't have a relationship, and they started to have a relationship later on in life, and he figured out that his dad was dying, and he wrote that song, and part of the lyrics of the song, he was riding a bull and
skydiving.
Yeah.
Rocky Mountain climbing.
Yeah. Went 2.7 seconds.
On a bull named
Blue Manchu.
Blue Manchu or Fu Manchu?
Something like that.
I always said Fu.
Fu Manchu makes more sense, I think. Like,
Blue Manchu. That sounds like chewing tobacco.
Yeah, I was about to say, is there some kind of, I know about Red Man, but is there a Blue Man?
They're Blue Manchu.
What makes you being about to die seems to make you want to have healthier habits.
Right.
And do things that you wish you would have done. So why don't we do those now, regularly?
I think that it's because God created us to be eternal beings. So we don't think about the end. We live as though we're going to live forever. And I think unless we train ourselves to think that way, to be a wise steward of the time that we have here on this earth, then, or what comes out of us naturally is just, I'm just going to keep on going. Like there's no end.
Well, I don't know. I think there's there's two sides to that. I guess God would have to be in the equation for that, because you could live like living like you're not an eternal being, which we are through Christ. We're eternal beings. But if you remove God from the equation and you treat your life like you're not an eternal being, and once you're dead, that's it, and there's just no more, data erased, then what's the point of anything,
Right.
You end up living a pointless life, but living a life like you know that you are an eternal being and that your life here on earth carries over into eternity, makes you treat people a different way, makes you be a good steward of the time that you are here on earth. Like knowing that your time here on earth is short in comparison to eternity is just a snap of the finger, makes you be intentional about that time because of what that means in eternity. And I thought about I guess like the church Sunday school answer for what would you do in the last 2 weeks of your life. You might be like, well, I'm sit down and study my Bible the whole time. I'm like, well, if you're saved, you're about to die in 2 weeks. Excuse me. You're about to be with God for eternity. Not saying that in those 2 weeks you totally forget about God. You obviously keep your relationship with God, and but I think it would make me want to be super intentional about all of my relationships with not just my family but all my friends. Like all those friends that I was nervous to talk to them about my faith, or tell them the truth about Jesus and everything, and be like, man, I only got 2 more weeks to tell them. I got to tell them right now. That I think that's where I hope I would be. But I think, like when Nick said, I was like, my first thing would be to sit down with my wife and my family and, just go through, they've got to carry on the rest of their lives without me. You got to go through all the important stuff, the finances and, all that junk. And then once you go through all that, man, just spend as much time with your family as you can. And
So
think about that from Jesus's perspective.
well, he knew his timeline, so that I think that is a motivator. Well, I was about to ask, is it wrong to have that urgency? Like, even though we know we're eternal and we live forever, in that aspect, I think it's good to have some urgency, because you're only here for a period of time, and not only has God given you a mission, but like you shouldn't treat it as in, well, there's always tomorrow, because there might not be, because you're not promised the next 10 minutes. But we don't live our lives that way.
So make it count. Make what count? For what? Right? Like, what are we living for? Like day to day, moment to moment. That's what it made me think about, because I was watching it, and I was hearing what both guys were saying. The guy that was going to go fight in Ukraine, his thought process was, I want them to remember me like this. I don't want them to remember me as a wasted away person in a wheelchair. I want them to remember me as somebody who fought for something bigger than myself. That was his reasoning behind going, him knowing he's got about another year of his body doing what it's supposed to do. And then beyond that, he's going to be wheelchair bound and a prisoner to his own mind. His thought process was, as I'm reflecting back as a prisoner in my own mind, locked in this shell of a body, am I going to be happy with what I did with the last year of my life? I started thinking about, for me, I think I would be very much like what Nick laid out there. I would make sure my wife was squared away well. I would make sure that, I've been investing in my kids. So I'd be making sure that if there's anything that I didn't relay to them that I know that they need going forward from their father, that would be first and foremost, and everything else would take a back seat. because it's all kingdom minded in those things as well. So, God being at the forefront of that, he is now. So, but if he wasn't, then yeah, I would probably have a big shift towards like, man, I got to tell everybody about Jesus. Like if that wasn't at the forefront now, then it would become that way really quick.
Have you ever heard the expression procrastination is a thief of time? And you say that, but, just being honest, most of the time you don't do it. But just to clarify something, we talk about like making sure things are squared away with your wife and your kids. I don't necessarily, it's not so much to make sure they have everything they need and they're comfortable. It's to make sure that they know why we're here and why you did what you did. I don't necessarily believe in, making sure that they're comfortable, because being comfortable, in my experience, gives you more of an opportunity to not rely on God. So it's not that I want to make sure they have everything's paid for and they have everything they need and they don't have to think or want anything. It's more, I want to make sure that they understand that you need to have an eternal mindset and why you're here, what you're here for. You're not here just like, I think some people look inward and think, well, what's something I want to do that I never done? I want to go climb a mountain. I want to go surf the biggest wave ever. I want to go, run a 100-mile race through the desert or something, trying to have all these accomplishments. But anytime I've ever went to go accomplish it and accomplished it, soon as I got done doing it, it didn't satisfy me. And you're just going to keep doing stuff and realizing, that there's got to be more than this.
Absolutely. How about you, Kyle? Weigh in. Where are you at?
I don't know. My first thought is, would I sleep or not?
You'd have to, otherwise you wouldn't be able to do anything. Like if you try to stay awake the whole time, you'd make it 3 days and
right. Well,
crash
sleep
out.
as little as possible.
Oh, okay.
Well, you hear people say you can sleep when you're dead, but if you don't die, then
that's assuming there's no sleeping in heaven. Who's to say that there's not like sleep in heaven? I don't know. Yeah, you might sleep in heaven. I don't know, but no, that was my initial thought. It was like, what are the things that I actually would want to do? And it's everything that y'all have said, but I don't know. It's hard to put yourself in that mindset until you're in it, I guess. Cause
who's to say there's not awesome mountains to climb in heaven?
Right, right.
Yeah, and I won't trying to
or
say
really
don't,
nice waves, or super nice waves.
I won't trying to say don't enjoy yourself or that life has to be this binding thing, but
you're just saying not to put like
to put your needs or not to put your wants in front of God's. I think that's what I try to come alongside my wife in and teaching our kids, like, go and be about yourself for a little while and see what happens. You'll see that you can't make yourself happy.
Right. That's what I was just thinking is,
it's like
just kind of putting myself through, putting myself through that thought process of having all the accomplishments really doesn't do anything for anybody else. It's for you. It's kind of a selfish, last ditch effort, it sounds like. And so, as fun as some of those things would be, what would be the most lasting thing? What would be the most God-honoring with the last few days that he would have you here on earth? Because, I think you could honor God and glorify God from the top of a mountain if you really feel like Everest is your last hurdle that you ever need to climb. But, I don't know, I feel like there's more important things. And so that's what I was just sitting here weighing out and like letting y'all talk. I was like, man, that's...
Well, think about like Moses went up a mountain to go look at the promised land.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I think about like some biblical accounts of that. Like, but Moses knew he was going.
Right.
And he went and climbed a mountain to go look at the promised land because he was thinking about what God had told him.
Right.
But he also charged Joshua.
Right. Exactly. I mean, and I don't think that was just a one sentence, here, it's yours. You know, I feel like there was a lot of training and preparation involved in that.
Well, it just goes back to, is what you're doing bringing you closer to God and helps you experience God, or is what you're doing pointing back to you, like, look at me and look what I did, or I'm doing this because it helps me connect with God and I want to be closer to God, and this is just an avenue for that. And it's also something I enjoy. God's not against having fun.
Right. Right.
But only your heart motive and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I think you're I don't think it's wise to say, well, I'm going to die in 2 weeks, so I'm just going to eat a quart of ice cream every day because it doesn't really matter.
Right.
So I think the question for
That's
me
what I
that
do.
comes from that is,
Cold Stone for breakfast. That's right, dude.
well, that side of it, you'll definitely be freed up. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like,
right.
you don't have to worry about preserving your body anymore because it's
Yeah.
gone.
But no, so I tell you, it was cool. I actually got a chance to work with my dad again. We were installing some floor, and his dad actually came down. So my grandpa came down to help him, and it was a really cool time. It's been a long time since we've all been able to do that, and one of the things that he said kind of hit me and Dad both. He was like, "Yeah, I've probably got about 15 years." And I was like, "Oh, shoot, why is he talking like that?" But what it is he's actually taking, just being real with himself. Is like, this is what I've got left.
Teach me to number my days.
Right. And so I was like, man, we all do kind of, I don't know, you get kind of down whenever you think about it. But what he said is, he was like, man, God's been good to me, though. He said, I got 15 more years to show.
That just reminds me to be good at the season of life you're in, and don't be worrying about tomorrow or looking forward to tomorrow or always chasing, retirement or,
right.
Like the season of life I'm in, they say your kids from 1 to 5 are the most impressionable and most trainable. So like in this season of life, I'm trying to be focused on my kids and know that when they get older and don't want to play with me, I'll have time for the other things that I
Right.
think God wants me to do, and not be so worried about trying to do everything, but be good at one or two things.
Yeah.
I think that's the question that rose up in me was, what's worth dying for, and how is what you're doing today serving that?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely has to. I mean, I think that's the purpose of life. I feel like to give death any real meaning, life has to have purpose.
So what do you think is something worth dying for?
Love.
Explain.
There's no greater love than this, that a man shall lay down his life for his fellow man. That was good. Thank you.
That's a good one.
Turn that one around. Won't expect it.
You had us in the first. You had us in the first half.
You had me at love.
But yeah, you're right though. Like that.
Billy
is,
Crystal said it too,
Yeah.
and Princess Bride.
Oh, is that where it came from? Then you
No.
found the verse.
No, but
Oh, okay.
Anybody want a peanut?
true love. There's no more noble cause than true love.
But yeah, I would say. I mean, yeah, love. I feel like that's a good, all-encompassing answer. Actually, I was about to try and come up with something else, but
I mean, that's it, dude.
you took it.
That's it.
That's all.
Love.
Yeah.
It's all about love.
What though? Like, you can love a lot of things.
Well, I think Jesus summed it up. Love God, love others.
Right.
So how are you going to do that with your remaining 14 days?
It goes back to what you say you value, and is what you're doing lining up with that.
Right. And that would, I guess, be the next challenge, is find what you actually value.
But, you know,
If we could look at life like that on the regular
Uh-huh.
and ask why we're doing what we're doing, well, we talked about it a couple episodes ago, but that'd make a big difference in the meaningfulness of our lives.
Yeah.
I would say if you're thinking about that with 2 weeks left, I would say it's probably too late. Like the 2 weeks left is not time to right all the wrongs and fix anything. The 2 weeks for me would be to kind of reflect and enjoy all that God has done and just share those experiences and that time with the people that you love and with God. And, you know, if you're trying to do all that in 2 weeks, then you got a tall task.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one of the things that impacted me about that discussion in that YouTube video this morning. Is that guy was, when John Lovell questioned him about that, he was like, you know, I decided that a long time ago, and I've dedicated my life to laying my life down for
Yeah.
weaker people, and I want my kids to remember me that way. I want my wife to remember me that way.
Yeah.
So he had thought through it, which was impressive. You know, like just.
Well, who are we to question that guy
Right.
and saying you're not taking care of your wife and your kids when, you know, his relationship might be rock solid and his wife and him and his wife might have agreed upon that and say, you know,
That's
yeah,
right.
go do that.
Yep.
That's right. And that was what was cool about the discussion, was because it was a discussion between two dudes that loved one another in the way that they walk through life together. You know, the question from John Lovell came from a loving place,
Yeah.
and the answer came from a loving place, and neither person got offended.
That's a whole nother, you know,
Yeah.
topic of discussion. People getting offended.
Maybe that's the next
Yeah.
one.
I'm here for it.
I'm feeling offended already.
I'm offended at your offense.
I'm going to stop you right there before it just gets out of hand. It's already gotten out of hand.
But no, I think back. You do have to live with that intentionality, and you have to have people around you to keep you accountable to. I know that's one of the things that we bring up every episode almost, but it's because it's so important. It really is. You know, because if they didn't have that accountability towards one another, like to even be able to bring up that, you know, the fact about him taking care of his family. You can't do that with just Joe Schmo off the street, you know. That's a kind of conversation that best happens in community. So yeah, holding each other accountable.
Don't put off tomorrow what you can do today.
Yep.
Is what, you know, kind of the summary for me. And that's easier said than done, but, you know, you need people around you that you can trust and that are close enough to you to say, hey, man, you're kind of out of line.
Yeah.
And not take it as an offense and be able to say, well, what do you see that I don't see?
Yep.
And I think that's what helps you stay on track, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I want to be that kind of friend to the people around me. That if a friend of mine had 2 weeks left to live and was hashing out what to do with all of that, that I had poured in and been a loving enough friend that I would have room to speak into that person's life like that.
Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes of John Lovell and his relationship with that guy. So
Yeah. I think that's a great goal.
I agree. Amen.
Amen.
cool. Well, this was a short episode, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that pretty much sums up the conversation.
I think so too. So find your people and live every day like it's your last. Can we play a Toby Keith song out?
Toby Keith.
Yeah,
I thought it was
you
Tim
said-
McGraw.
No, so well that one too, but so I put off for tomorrow what I can't get done today. I'll play it for you. Go for a walk, say a little prayer, take a deep breath of mountain air.
Put on my glove and play some catch.
It's time that I make time for that.
Stay up late and oversleep. Me and Kyle are the only rednecks in the room. I'm sorry.
Alrighty, y'all.
There was a
Well-
bromance happening there that I just.
That was a extremely bromantic time.
See, so if you stick around till after the music ends, you may hear Nick and I singing. And Nick sang at the end of the episode on 2 episodes ago.
This is not going to be a habit.
I don't know, man. We're 3 for 3 now.
The people need to respond so it doesn't turn into a habit.
Yeah, we
And
need
we
topics.
also would love a question too.
Yeah, that would be great. So I'm
All
going
right,
to cue
let's
the
close it
music.
out.
I'm going to cue the music and give them all the stuffs. Here we go. That's right. The music is cued. So that means it's time for me to close it out. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Walking Together podcast. Just want to thank you for hanging around, listening to us sing a little bit, talk a little bit, and yeah, just enjoying hanging out with you. So again, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to leave us a comment, question, topic, or anything, go to gatheringsurfcity.com/WTP. You can find everything you need there. Just, again, thank y'all for hanging out. We will see you next time. Later.
Oh, yeah.
Go for a walk, say a little prayer, take a deep breath of mountain air.
Put on my glove and play some catch.
It's time that I make time for that.
Stay up late and oversleep. Me and Kyle are the only rednecks in the room. I'm sorry.